And I'm excited about Kathryn that we're going to be bringing on the stage. I've been following her online for about a year, so it was really fun at dress rehearsal. I was like, so excited to meet you, and I can't wait to hear more. Kathryn Jones is the founder and current president of the African American Chamber of Commerce. She's always had a passion for business entrepreneurship and saw the Chamber as an opportunity to encourage, uplift, and expand Black-owned and led businesses in Idaho and beyond. And her hope is to bring resources to the Treasure Valley that will help grow cultural diversity.
And that was such an interesting point. Like when I first talked to Kathryn, it wasn't very long ago. I mean, honestly, the last couple weeks, she'd caught my attention on LinkedIn. I had reached out, and I was like, "Hey, is this something you might be interested in?" She's like, "Yep, that sounds pretty good." And so we're just really excited to bring that diverse perspective of what she does and what she's doing. And she recently set up this organization that is kind of like a hybrid, I would say, similar to kind of what we're doing,
right?
With U.S. Energy. And so I'm super excited. And without further ado,
Kathryn Jones.
Kathryn Jones.
Thank you. Like they said, my name is Kathryn Jones, and I started the African American Chamber of Commerce in May of 2020. It was kind of an opportunity to focus some of the energy that I had from last summer, and it gave me the ability to kind of network and help build businesses in the area. The African American Chamber of Commerce is not like other chambers of commerce where it's member driven. Our organization is more community driven in that all of our events are put on by the community as a way of allowing the community to invest in Black-owned businesses. So we don't have membership fees or anything like that. We only have sponsorship levels. You can always go to our website. It is aaccofIdaho.com if you want to see what those sponsorship levels are. The list of our activities that are coming up should be on there by the end of the week if you want to sponsor an event. So I guess I'm going to shift a little bit from sustainable resources and talk a little bit about diversity and economic growth. And there's a reason that I think it's important, especially as a sustainable ideology, just because I think with equity and inclusion comes diversity, and so with those things, you have the ability to continuously learn how to make your organization diverse, how to make it inclusive, and how to practice equitable policies in your companies. So all of this is based on an article I read in 2018 in Forbes by Mira Sheldma. And what he explained in his article was that companies were failing at diversity, equity, and inclusion. And he said that all companies were making the same two mistakes. The first mistake is that companies weren't aligning their policies and their practices with the organizational goals. So they're putting all these practices in place, but none of it matched the culture of the company, so it failed. Secondly, there was a mismatch in the design of the company and the implementation. So you had great policies, but none of your employees had the tools or the resources to even implement any of the things that you put in place. So for that reason, anything that you tried to do for diversity didn't work. So what we're going to talk about is how to effectively add diversity to your company and what the benefits of that are going to be. So the first part is workplace culture, because that was the very first thing that they discussed in the article. It talked about how workplace cultures, so most companies who are now looking to get into diversity, equity, inclusion have these workplace cultures that have been in place for years, and employees that have been in place for years, and now there's this big change and no one knows how to do it. So the first thing that you want to do is clearly identify what you want to achieve, okay? If diversity is the goal, then your policy shouldn't just be I just want to add more Black women to leadership, or I just want to add more queer people to leadership, or I just want to add more, a specific group of people in leadership. Equity and inclusion brings diversity. So your policies should be to be inclusive, and it should be clearly stated. Implementation is key. So you have the policies, you have what you want to do, but do your employees have the tools? Are they motivated to do it? Do they care? All of those things go into making sure that your policies, your procedures, the workplace culture, all shifts in the right direction. Do not copy and paste. So don't Google somebody else's policies. Don't, Wells Fargo is doing this, so it must work for all banks. That's not how it works. Your company structure is different because your specific needs for your company is different. So your policies should be fit for your staff, what you're trying to achieve, not what someone else is trying to achieve. The second way is hiring. So one of the things that we hear a lot is there's not a good candidate pool, we don't have enough these kind of people, we don't have enough those kind of people, and that's not always the case. What is happening, though, is that your hiring policy may not be inclusive of the type of people that you're looking to hire. So the first thing I'm going to challenge you to do is to widen your definition of what diversity is. So my favorite definition of diversity is the practice or quality of including or involving people from a range of different social, ethnic backgrounds, or different genders, sexual orientations, etc. The reason why this one is my favorite is because equity and inclusion is a practice. It's not something you do one time and then, it's over. You hire some queer people and now you're like, oh, we're diverse. Like, that's not how it works. You have to continuously practice diversity. You have to continuously be inclusive. You have to have inclusive things going on in your company. Secondly, you want to recruit from a diverse pool for a more qualified workforce. So there's a group called the EW Group, and they have come up with 7 steps on how to recruit to make sure that you're getting a more qualified workforce. The first one is your job description. Is your job description formal and punitive? Does it just tell you what you need to be? Or does it focus on the skills that you need to have? Does it have inclusive language? Does it allow a person who may be disabled to be able to read it easily? Things like that are things that you need to consider. The second is widen your search. So I know a person who found a job on Twitter. You never would think that you could find a job on Twitter, but you can. And the person was completely qualified for the job. The recruiter just was kind of out of the box, figure out some things. And that's how they found their job. And they're really good at it. LinkedIn, Indeed, formal ways of finding jobs are not the only ways to do it. Your website is great. Headhunters are great. But sometimes you have to think outside of the box. And sometimes you have to use those tools to get a diverse crowd. Make sure that your application process is designed to be inclusive. Are your instructions friendly? Are you sending the right message? Things like that. Make shortlisting fair. So you should have 2 people making shortlists in a formal setting, and then go from there. But take out all of the personal information. So anything that would relate to demographics, race, age, things like that, that normally would be considered, take all that out and just see what the qualifications are. You never know who you might end up with. Allow for reasonable adjustments. So are you allowing for accommodations in your application process? Are you making sure that it's easily accessible if they don't have the internet? Are you making sure that if they do have the internet, it's easy to follow, the steps are easy to go through, things like that? You want to prepare an inclusive interview process. So your interview process, everyone, if it's a panel interview, everyone's goals should be agreed upon first. No one should just be kind of shotgunning it along. And this is a perfect place to check your biases. We can all act like we don't have them, but we all know that's not necessarily the case. And so this is where you know that your biases will impact the interview process. So you make not necessarily allowances for it, but know that it's something that will impact, and be prepared to challenge it if it comes up. And set the right tone and ask the right questions. So if you're not setting the right tone and you're not asking the right questions, then your interview process will go askew. It will definitely go askew, and the person will not feel included, and it will make your company feel unwelcomed. Now, partner with key organizations to provide expertise and resources. What that means is if you don't know, ask somebody who does. Everybody's not an expert in everything. The world is ever changing. Topics are always going to change. You're never going to know everything all the time. But if you're partnering and you have resources available for when it comes up, you don't have to try to scramble to find it later. And then you also want to invest in talent development. So it's ongoing. If you have a candidate who doesn't necessarily formally meet the requirements, but you know leadership-wise they would be excellent at it, invest in that. Scholarship opportunities if they need to go back to school. If they just need a mentor, find them one. Those are the things that are going to help you make sure that you continue to be inclusive in your workplace culture. The benefits of diversity in the workforce. So companies with gender diverse executive teams are 21% more likely to be profitable. So if it's not just men or it's not just women, and we're able to make those decisions together, we're also able to make more money doing it. Racially and ethnically diverse companies are 35% more likely to perform better. Gender diverse companies are 13% more likely to have higher performance. And diverse teams overall, 87% better at making decisions for the company. So diversity isn't a bad thing. I know lately it's been like the bad word in the room, but ultimately diversifying your workforce isn't going to do anything but help you. Inclusive companies are 1.7 times more innovative than uninclusive companies. So that's my little spiel for the day. If you'd like more information about the African American Chamber of Commerce, these are our contacts. Do you have any questions? Honestly, I think we got a lot of work to do. I think we like equity and inclusion as long as it doesn't mean change. And so what starts to happen is when it's something that changes what we know or it's something we don't know anything about, we push back against it. When I started the chamber last year, I got several emails about how it was racist and divisive and it wasn't helping because it wasn't something that people understood. And I still get those emails today. But just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it's something we should push back against. It just means that you need to ask more questions. And if you're not asking questions or you're not trying to figure out exactly what your issue is with the organization or the ideology or whatever it is, I think that becomes a you problem, not a me problem, if that makes sense.
African-American guy. When he first got here, he came up in 2011, and he felt a lot of pressure, to where he feels like it's a lot better now, but he's established. So he broke through a lot of these barriers, and now, I don't know if it was, he felt like he had to do more than most, but his vision is obviously more than most. He's got 2.1 million followers now.
So you also have to consider, and great success, what are you pushing against though? Like
Yeah.
what are you trying to establish yourself in?
Yep.
So one of the things, so I came in 2014. I moved here from Detroit with my son.
Yep.
And when I moved here, the biggest problem we had was wolves. I always tell people the story about how the first time I watched the news, they were telling people to lock up their cattle because wolves were loose. They were just,
Lock up your cattle.
It was in Star or somewhere crazy like that, and they were like, lock them up because they ate a herd of sheep. Like it was like a new breaking news thing, and they were really upset. And I thought I'd hit the gold mine. So I'm like safe, quiet. I don't go outside, so I don't have to worry about wolves at night.
Yeah.
But then I got out in the world, and I hear this Boise kind a lot. Boise is not as kind as it really wants people to think that it is. And it's not that, I don't think it's the Treasure Valley doesn't want to be kind,
Yeah.
but I do think we have a long way to go. And one of the things that we have to understand is change is not bad. And just because I'm different or I'm from somewhere else, because, we hate Californians, oh my God.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean I'm here to ruin your life. I just want to be happy just like you. You guys have clean air and better jobs. So I think I deserve to raise my son in those same circumstances just like you.
Just a fair opportunity.
Clear opportunity. And so once I think we can get through some of the misunderstandings and the miscommunications that have happened, I think, over the past little bit, I think Boise, the Treasure Valley, Idaho, can be an economic powerhouse.
Yep.
Because it definitely has the resources to do so. But I also noticed that we fight against diversity a lot. And that is going to be the thing that keeps us from where we need to be.
And I think it's safe to say that change in general, especially over the last year with the pandemic, has been difficult for everyone. You know, and so having a certain amount of, I guess, tenacity in a sense, like even doing this event, it was very difficult to get this done, as a newcomer to Boise and even Caldwell, they're like, who are you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who do you know?
Yeah.
And where I'm from in North Dakota, we call it a boys club mentality.
Yes.
And it's Idaho and North Dakota are very similar in that sense. And, me coming out with long hair and new ideas, it's like, you're kind of a threat,
Like,
but I'm just like,
idea?
I want to
Exactly.
help solve problems. And so that's the hardest thing is to get the time with people, to build that relationship and be able to tell your story. And I think, that's why I appreciate you coming here and telling your story.
Definitely.
Because I think these things help, make that change less scary.
Definitely.
For people.
Thank you.
Sure.
My question is, what can people do within the Treasure Valley? What kind of events, what kind of educational programs, what is there available resource-wise for people who want to learn more or become more involved and be an advocate for change like this?
So let me ask you, the first question I'm going to ask you before I answer your question is, what have you done on your own? Are you Googling? Are you researching? Are you...
What-
do you know any Black people? Do you know any people that don't look like you?
I do.
Okay.
I know a diverse population. And
Okay.
being a woman,
Yes.
being small, being blonde, that's, there you go. There's 3 against you right there when you try to go into a place where they're much different than you are.
Yeah.
So I've been in places where I look much different than other people, or I don't have the same education as other people, and I have to prove that I do. Where somebody else who has it on paper, they can just walk in and not do such a good job.
Definitely.
So, I
So
understand.
my first, keep in mind, I'm not, Black people, we're not a monolith. This is just my opinion. The first thing you want to do is do your own research. So yes, there are activities, there are educational things. How many of you know that there's NAACP chamber in the Treasure Valley? Well, I mean, before just now. Before I said it just now. See, but so you understand what I'm saying? If he hadn't invited me today, how many people would have known that there was a African American Chamber of Commerce? and we're everywhere. So we're not hiding. Like, diversity isn't hiding from Idaho. We're not like in a corner somewhere waiting to pop out and surprise you. It's everywhere. Whether or not you choose to see it is the question. So diversity is all around you. There's Latino Fest. I'm sure we all go down. We get our elotes, and we, enjoy the Coke in the bottle, and we do all this stuff, and then we go home. But what are you doing to advocate for those people daily? Queer folks, I'm sure you know some. Are you standing up at home for those people? Are you standing up at home for Black people? Because I'm sure you've had to have conversations in your diverse circle about diversity and things that have been happening. Are you standing up for those people? So before you can branch out into the world, you got to affect your circle of influence first. And so if you're not challenging your mom and your dad and, the good old boys that are in your circle, there's not much you're going to be able to do for the rest of the world, because you won't have the fortitude to do and to stand the way that you would need to. Does that make sense?
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure thing. Any other questions, concerns, opinions? You're welcome.
And yes, and thank you for being here and helping us try to articulate why diversity is very important. My dad isn't here, but he's a Native American tribal member.
Okay.
And so he's got a Caucasian father and a Native American mother, and he was always, kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
To where the full bloods, I guess you would say, of the tribe kind of looked at him as kind of a mutt, and the Caucasian people, looked at him as a Native American, and so a lot of that has really changed, and I got to experience that as kind of growing up.
Yeah.
In that mixed race, and in parts, we've had to deal with. Not necessarily me, but him quite a bit, had to deal with a lot of racial adversity.
And I think, the funny thing is, I think that's where we miss it. So you would be surprised how many people in Idaho have a spouse that's not white. They're a lot.
Yep.
They work with you every day. And so you say the things that you say to those people, and they have to go home and they have to be at work and try not to rip your head off first, but then how does that make them feel later? So I get it. I know we're all used to, I don't like change either. Domino's changed the cheese on my pizza one time. I was so disgusted about it. I said I wasn't gonna go back, but I did, because change is good, and it was like provolone. So who doesn't like that? But we have to, change has to be openly accepted. Otherwise, we're just shooting ourselves. I always tell people when they ask me what I think right now, we're in that baby in the bathwater stage. We vote against our own interests. And so it's like throwing out the baby and the bathwater. I just need the baby, but I don't want you to have the water, so I'm gonna throw it all out. And it's not economically productive at all.
Yeah, and so it's just a great point to bring up your perspective. And a lot of people want to talk about stats and statistics and facts all the time. But I like to talk about emotions and feelings, because I'm willing to act on those.
Yeah.
And oftentimes a statistic will maybe deter or try to attract, as well. And facts can be subjective.
Yeah.
In a sense, depending on where you're coming from.
Definitely.
And so, bringing your feelings and your emotions here, I really thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Because we want to hear more of those things, and it helps us, be just more understanding and empathetic. So if we can just give her a round of applause here, appreciate that.
Thank you.